of Common Sense America with Eden Hill. Yeah.
And good morning, Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill, and welcome to Holy Week. We have a very special week planned for you here at Common Sense America. It is a beautiful spring day here in Eastern North Carolina, and we're ready to rock and roll. I hope you had a blessed weekend. I hope you had a good Palm Sunday with your friends, your family, and your community. You know what, you guys, we're all about God, country, and family here at Common Sense America. For all those who are watching on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, thank you so much for your support here at Common Sense America. As each and every one of you know, we are in the process of moving and we are headed to another neighborhood just right around the corner from our old neighborhood. So if you hear moving boxes, if you hear thumps, if you hear voices in the background, have no fear. That is what is happening here at Common Sense America. We will have a couple special guests bringing here this week. I really wanted to focus on Holy Week. I really wanted to focus on what Good Friday and Easter really stands for. I really wanted to focus on the women in the Bible and those who were at the tomb waiting for Christ, rising from the dead. So we are going to be bringing over some very special guests later this week to focus on Holy Week. We are all, we just want to talk about what it truly means in this day and time and in this culture, and how it is still so very relevant to our journey, whether we are, across the world or right here in Eastern North Carolina. So this week and later this week, and I did send in a couple requests to some people you may recognize from TV, from different shows growing up or different shows now. They are women of faith. They are women of faith that are not afraid to talk about their faith. And so I'm excited to potentially have them join Common Sense America. I have definitely shared my faith journey with them in personal notes, and I'm hoping that they will be able to join us, whether it's this week or whether it's next week. But as we head into this beautiful month of April, we have so much to talk about. God, country, family, what is at stake for this precious nation of ours? We are also going to be talking about a lot that's happening on the forefront. But I wanted to bring over to the show today, we have a brand new guest, Dr. Robert Cherry. He has a brand new book out. It came out last month. It came out in February. And we're going to be talking about his book, some of his most recent articles. He is with AEI. And for those who are outside the DC spectrum, that is the American Enterprise Institute. He is going to be talking a lot about his more recent articles in the National Review. And then in the latter half of the show, I'm bringing back to the show one of your favorites from the American Liberty News. We have coming to the show Victoria Churchill at 9:35, and she's going to be talking about the Trump indictment, what is happening tomorrow. And she's also going to be talking about 2A and all of her updates on 2A. You know how much she loves and how much she is very passionate about 2A. So on that further note, I am going to bring over to the show Dr. Robert Cherry. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. It's so nice to meet you. I was doing my research on you, and I heard the accent when I was listening to some of your radio hits. I lived in New York, and my family's from Jersey, so I have a gut feeling you're probably from Brooklyn. Did I get that right?
I think so.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you. I want to first introduce my audience here at Common Sense America, #Common Sense. We're about talking common sense. I looked at your book and I'd like to order it, but I also want to talk about your most recent articles. But before we get to that, if you could share with my audience is military, retirees, veterans, and a lot of young moms who are worried about their kitchen table discussions and worried about the nation's backyard. If you could share a little bit about what you have been doing, and then I want to head right into your new book.
Well, I've been for 40 years or so researching issues of discrimination and poverty, and focused particularly on this lower quarter of the Black population that is sort of hunkered in these poverty concentrated neighborhoods in urban America.
Mhm.
And I've been outraged on how liberals who claim these are the people they want to do things for
Mhm.
have basically given up on anything uh, about that group. You know, they'll fight for more blacks to be in corporate representation,
Mhm.
uh, students at black colleges getting into STEM areas.
Mhm.
All of that is good. You know,
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But this lower quarter of the black population that is stuck in these neighborhoods with gun violence, poor schools, etc., they've
Mhm.
basically given up on. And so they talk about reparations
Yes.
or some kind of financial payouts to people.
Mhm.
But the schools, the gun violence, they have nothing really to say about it.
I was looking, I'm going to cite your articles here, and I have scrolling at the bottom of the screen the link where people can go and read all of your articles. Now, I noticed in the most recent one, you did on March the 30th, demands for reparations hide liberal failures. Can we break that down for a second? I'm all about exposing the absolute truth on what liberals are really trying to do. I had served on Capitol Hill for many years, and the social justice terms 2 decades ago are completely different today. So, talk to me a little bit about what liberals are trying to mask and what we need to be looking for, even here in Eastern North Carolina. Talk to me about that as it pertains to those elected officials and what liberals are really trying to do.
Well, certainly, one of the things is they've rejected family
Mhm.
in profound ways, that the idea of having a success sequence, you go to school, get a degree, you
Mhm.
get a job, you get married, and then you have kids is anathema to liberals,
Mhm.
because that's blaming single mothers. And, you know, they have a whole kind of rhetoric
Yeah.
about why they don't want to have anything to do with strengthening the family, and which is, you know, a good part of my book is
Mhm.
about the kinds of things that can be done to strengthen the family.
All right, let's talk about that. Let's talk about because this show is very much focused on God, family, and country. And I outside looking in, I live in a very much a bubble here in Eastern North Carolina. It's still a lot of beautiful families, a lot of people who believe in God, country, and family. But being from New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and having served 20 years in DC, I know that's not the case in a lot of those parts of this country because you have a lot of kids raising kids. You have a lot of homelessness. You have impoverished children on the city streets. So talk to me about that. What is your recipe in this book about the state of the family?
Well, one of the things, I mean, it would be nice if certainly among adolescents this success sequence was promoted. That's what in charter schools and in
Mhm.
and other places, there's this promotion of you have agency. You can control your life to a reasonable degree. Yes, there are roadblocks, and particularly Central City Black youth have more roadblocks than many people. Uh, but you can still find your way into the middle class through
Mhm.
your own agency.
Mhm.
And if you follow that sequence of school, work, marriage, and children,
Mhm.
you can be successful in this country.
Mhm.
And so that's one thing. But the other thing is you have to give services to young, unmarried mothers.
Mhm.
Many of them don't come from households where have been, they've observed how to be good mothers, how to move ahead with their life, balancing motherhood and making a living. Uh, and so visiting nursing services is an important step. having people come in to help with preschool and how you help your kid prepare for education, and then certainly charter schools
Mhm.
where they cajole mothers to be the best mothers they can be by having them involved with their kids' education.
Mhm.
I give the example of people want to do exercise to help themselves,
Right,
to
right.
health, but people have complicated lives and it falls by the side unless you have a coach. You
Mhm.
go you go to a gym, you got a coach, and that's what the charter schools do. They allow the better charter schools.
Mhm.
They allow parents to be the kind of parents they want to be uh, by setting yardsticks that are manageable for them.
Mhm.
So I think those are the kinds of things that can turn around the educational trajectory for many of these young kids.
Let me ask you about historical Black colleges and universities, as that is the next step to the next phase of their education. If you can talk to this, what are you finding with the acceptance into these historical Black colleges and universities? And are you finding them coming out with a very powerful education, or more of a watered down education that's more focused on diversity, equity, inclusion versus the merit and integrity of knowledge and hard work?
Well, two things about that. One of the issues is that there's too much of a emphasis on four-year college for all.
Mhm.
That particularly if you look at the performance of urban high schools, particular Black urban high schools, those kids are not prepared uh, in general. You know, 60, 70% of them don't have the skills to perform in an academic setting, that
Mhm.
they need much more vocational training.
Mhm.
They need, and it's not becoming plumbers and electricians because they don't have really the skills for that.
Right.
They have to go into certificate programs
Mhm.
and build themselves up. But just let me say something about the Black colleges.
Sure, sure.
Uh, it's uneven. There's the top third half of those colleges are pretty demanding. And one of the things that's happened is that corporate America is investing a lot in Black colleges
Mhm.
in STEM areas, in management, in entrepreneurship, because they will give contracts to Black businesses like Target
Mhm.
and Amazon.
Mhm.
They privilege those businesses in many ways, and they go to the Black colleges because they don't have to deal with affirmative action or any. I mean, if you go to the University of North Carolina,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't have a program just for Black students.
Right. Right.
You go to
Exactly.
the Black colleges, you get all around that.
Right.
So, so I think, particularly in the last couple of years, this corporate investment in Townsend State and a number of the Black colleges has been pretty effective for that group of Blacks that have been successful to make it to the college. But again, my book is much more about the ones that are not successful.
Mhm.
Uh, and what can you do to put them on the path to a middle class
Sure,
life?
sure, sure. What would you say two or three root issues of those who are struggling to get to that next success step? What was hindering them in their childhood? Is it lack of a father? Is it a single family home? Is it the location in which they lived? What do you cite as a part of that recipe?
All of the above.
All of the above.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, yes, there are risk factors. It
yeah,
isn't as if every single mother is a horrible mother.
sure.
As I mentioned, if you look at educational attainment, Black women have been incredibly successful of transforming their educational attainment in the last
Mhm.
15, 20 years.
Right.
Uh, but they have a lot of balls to juggle.
Right.
They have kids, they have social relations,
Right.
uh, and they got a job, and it's hard to do it alone. So it isn't that they don't want to be the mothers that can be successful in navigating their kids,
Hmm.
but they can't do it alone. And the relationships they have with some of the men make things worse.
Hmm.
And particularly these melded families
Hmm.
where the wife has a kid with one person,
Right.
moves on to the next man, has a kid with them. The
Right.
first kids get lost because that man doesn't, has no relationship to those other kids.
Right.
So these kind of melded families just don't work out. It's not like Modern Family on television.
Right. Right. I mean, I think about Oprah. I think about the former First Lady, Mrs. Obama. Do you look to them as examples? Because because those two examples really focus more of the left-leaning cultural aspects versus then really lifting them up and getting them into good trade schools, mentorships, etc. What are your thoughts on that? Because you mentioned the Black woman piece.
Well, I think Michelle Obama is a vacuous person in many ways.
Hmm.
She has an image, but what's the substance of it?
Hmm.
She was against food deserts and
Hmm.
certain kinds of things that were fine to a point. But this issue of what's going to turn around 10-year-old kids in these inner cities,
Yeah.
what's going to confront the gun violence in
Yes.
these
Yes.
neighborhoods.
Hmm.
There's very little substance to any of that. Now, her husband, when he was president, he actually tried many of the things that I talk about in the book:
Hmm.
vocational training,
Hmm.
distinguishing between violent, nonviolent crime, supporting charter schools.
Hmm.
But he got incredible pushback from that and he moved away.
Hmm.
And now nobody in the Democratic Party can support charter schools. They can't support vocational training. So it his time has passed and hers have passed, and they're just sort of irrelevant to
Yes.
what's needed for those communities to change the trajectories.
Let's talk about New York City for a second, since you were from Brooklyn and I lived many years up there, and it is a home away from home, home sweet home in many ways. And I worked in two different aspects. I worked at the Bowery Mission, the oldest homeless rescue mission in the nation. And I worked a lot with the young children's program. It's called Kids with a Promise. And the reason why I bring that up, not because they're paying me to promote them, I have such a passion for what they are doing for those kids in the city. A lot of those kids, all they know is the concrete jungle that's raised them. They don't know what it's like to run in green grass and be amongst cows and have that, agricultural background. There's a camp that they have in the
The fresh
Poconos.
air.
Yep, yep. And so, my question to you, let's talk about New York, because that is, like I said, that is very relevant to a lot of people who watch the show. The highest amount of people watching the show are from New York City. So, let's talk New York, since
Okay.
that audience gets it. Talk to me about what can we do for these elementary and middle school kids, because I listen to 7/7 ABC, Curtis Sliwa. I listen to Greg Kelly every day, and they talk about the crime, the ridden crime in the cities. As soon as the schools let out, they go to the libraries. There was a story that Curtis talked about a week or two ago. They go to the libraries and they harass the librarians and they harass the kids that are in there and harass the retirees. So what can we say to this? What is causing this aspect of this generation to do these types of things? Is it because there is a restriction on the police? I don't want to go down that path, but I really want to really talk about the education and the elementary thoughts and what are they just flat out living in a society where the parents don't have the time, the money, or the energy, and so they let the schools and they let the culture raise them?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, I think, this victimization ideology, where every time in every place liberals focus on the victimization of Black Americans,
Yep.
focus on white supremacy,
Hmm.
uh, structural racism,
Right.
1619 Project.
Yeah, I saw you're
So,
citing that. Yes.
what do you think a young Black kid who's struggling in school a bit, has a complicated relationship with a step parent?
Hmm.
What do you think that kid is going to think about when they hit some roadblock?
Hmm.
They're going to think about, I'm a victim and I'm angry. And you then get a street culture where once you have a significant amount of gun violence,
Yeah.
particularly boys, but not only boys, but particularly boys, have to toughen up. They have to believe, they have to make it clear that they're not going to be bullied on the street.
Hmm.
So you have a kind of hair trigger mentality among young kids. And, the best outcome is they have a fist
Right.
fight. But the
Right.
worst outcome is somebody pulls a knife or gun
Yes.
and it gets more violent. But I mean, I think that kind of environment is something that is not confronted head on because you're blaming the victim.
Right.
In New York, liberals are arguing that young Black kids, 16 and 17, should not be arrested for having illegal guns because they need those guns to protect themselves.
Oh, give me a break. Give me a break.
No, that's the kind of legitimacy. You
Yeah.
listen on NPR, you'll
Yeah.
have someone say that, these are rough neighborhoods and they need those guns. Uh, so, what do you now? I'm not saying this envelops all young,
Sure.
but it's an it's an environment that has to be navigated by everyone who lives in those neighborhoods.
Hmm.
And the school system, I mean, one of the things about the school system is that if you have more charter schools, which take the kids whose parents are a little bit more committed to their kids' education, will do stuff, it then makes the public school a dumping ground
Yes.
where you have an even more concentration of these troubled youth.
Hmm.
And so that's why a number of liberals are against charter schools, against selective schools,
Right.
not because I think legitimately they don't want the neighborhood public school, to become even more of a dumping ground for the
Hmm.
most at-risk kids.
Hmm.
And it's a hard thing to figure out what to do if you don't get this environment changed where this gun violence
Yes.
and sort of toxic masculinity rule the day. And I have things in my book that try to confront those in ways that can change the trajectory in neighborhoods.
I think you should give that to Mayor Eric Adams. I think that would be a great help to his administration. Not a fan of his administration. He is just a talking head with no action. And I've, listening to WABC 77 New York, I listen to it just about every day, and I hear the different commentary of what he quote is saying and what he's trying to do. And as a Black man and as the mayor of New York City, I don't see it. I don't see it. And the crime
Well,
continues to go up. The crime continues
well,
to
but one of the problems is, one, he's not experienced as a politician. But more importantly, the whole Democratic Party is against him. I mean, they couldn't get a change in bail reform at the state level.
Yeah, yeah.
he can't, his city council won't give him anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's sort of out there, and because he's inexperienced,
Yes.
I think and he's caught in a bind where he has to give a certain amount of liberal rhetoric. I mean, that's part
Yeah,
of
he
the
has to have
con.
that. He has to have that quota, Dr. Jerry. He has to have it. You know it. You know
So
he's gonna have it.
I feel bad for that situation, but that's the reality in New York.
Yeah, I mean, my precious New York. I would love to see it what it was before COVID. I would love to see it before Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, as Lee was said, got his hands all over it and really hurt the city during COVID. And I know that obviously we're not going to go down the COVID thing, but I know that there is a better New York where you were sitting. I know that city has so much promise, and it's the Statue of Liberty sits proudly out there. It is, and it was, and it has such historical precedence that city can rise once again. And I believe in that. Talk to me about where your book tour is taking you. Talk to me about handing out these books to maybe Mayor Adams' team to educate them.
Well, if you can get me on 77 radio, that would be great.
Well,
But
I'll make a couple calls.
but it's a little bit of tough sledding. I'm talking. There's the Manhattan Institute in New York that puts out City Journal.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm talking there, and some of the radio stations in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
But it's a tricky thing, as you know. Anything that is even centrist has no play in the legacy media.
I know.
They just don't want to know that.
No.
So it's really shows like yours around the country
Mm-hmm.
that are helping me give voice to the kinds of policies that can turn around. And it's not just this Black urban communities, but there's a lot of rural communities.
Yes.
Where there's the breakdown of family.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional values
Mm-hmm.
are by the wayside.
Yes.
And so there's a need for these kinds of programs and these kinds of perspectives to try to help stem the bleeding in many places in this country.
Yes.
But you see it most in these inner city Black neighborhoods.
Right, exactly. On a final thought, I'll leave you on this. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Dr. Robert Cherry. His brand new book came out in end of February, The State of the Black Family, 60 Years of Tragedies and Failures and New Initiatives Offering Hope. One final thought to send your way. National Religious Broadcasters in mid-May in Orlando, Florida, they're all about book publishers. They're all about new books. They're all about podcasters and Media Row. If your publicist could get you down there, I think that'd be great exposure for what you're doing.
When is this?
It is May 22nd through the 25th, National Religious Broadcasters in Orlando, Florida.
Thanks a lot. And by the way, my ebook is $10.
Oh, fabulous. So everybody go to Amazon, check out his new book. And also, I have going across the screen your profile with AEI.org. I explained to people before you hopped on what AEI is for those new or not in the DC Beltway. And finally, any upcoming things that we can look for, any new writings coming out, National Review, what do we have coming down the pike for you?
Well, not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing back from you. I'm excited to see what you have in store, and I hope you have a blessed Holy Week. And thank you so much. My regards to Brooklyn. I got the Brooklyn coffee and bagels right here. I have them shipped every week. So,
well, thanks for having me, and I hope this was good for your audience.
It was. Thank you so much, sir. Have a blessed day. We'll see you soon.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye. For all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill, and we will be bringing right over to the show at just about 9:35 a.m. Eastern Time, Victoria Churchill with American Liberty News. She's going to give us her monthly check-in on 2A, what is happening in and around each state in the nation. And also, she's going to be talking about the Trump indictment. She did a couple interviews at the end of last week talking about what is happening with that. She's going to break it down for us. Until then, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Thanks for joining Common Sense America. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. We are just waiting moments for Victoria Churchill. And, I just wanted to share with each and every one of you, as we're headed into this Holy Week, if you have not had a chance to look for those. I know everybody's all about the Easter eggs and the Easter hunts, which is so much fun for the young kids, and I absolutely love it. I remember my grandmother's doing it for us, getting the Easter shoes and the Easter hats and the Easter dresses. Yes, I know I am now dating myself with that regard, but I would just absolutely love, if you have a chance, hop over to Instagram today. There is, and I'm going to read it to you as I'm looking down at my phone. There is a new author with a new book coming out. You guys know how much I love my books and I love my authors. Bonnie Gray. I'm going to extend an invite to her for here at Common Sense America. She has a newsletter that comes out, I believe it's about weekly, maybe bi-weekly. It's called Breathe Newsletter with Bonnie Gray. And she has a brand new book out, and you can go on her Instagram page and download it, the first chapter. And let me just talk to you briefly about the book, because I would love to get her here at Common Sense America. But as we're waiting for Victoria, I would love to just talk about her book and what she is doing. Discover soul-filling practical applications for refreshing your spirit with God's loving words of affirmation, releasing the stress that has been keeping you stuck, restoring your peace and joy to your body and emotions, reflecting on important life-giving truths, and savoring your days as you nurture your inner self. Activating God's peace in your life is a practice to restore wholeness by engaging your whole heart, your mind, your body, and your soul. As people of faith, we practice stress relief to be more mindful of God's loving presence, because He is our loving creator who gives, renews, and sustains the breath of life in you and me. So if you have a chance, this book is coming out. It is called Breathe, Simple by Bonnie Gray. I am asking her to come on this show so she can talk about the background of the book, how it came to be. I follow her on Instagram, Facebook, sign up for her newsletter. You will not want to miss it. It is both for women and men. So, men, don't feel excluded. This is a great book for you and your daily journey. And she shows in chapter 1 just very basic things I think we overlook as we are spinning around in how many different spin cycles during our day. So, I would like to encourage you to go pick up her book. It is on Amazon, and you can also get a copy of the first chapter for free if you sign up for her newsletter. Go over to Instagram. A couple other people I would like to recommend you follow on Instagram are Danica McKellar. She was Winnie on The Wonder Years and is now done a complete transformation in her faith journey thanks to Candace Cameron. Candace Cameron led her to the Lord last year. So she was all over Instagram this weekend talking about Palm Sunday, talking about Easter, and what it truly means to her this year as she completely has this new relationship with the Lord. So I would love for you to check out her faith journey on Great American Community and also on her personal page for Danica McKellar. Also, Patty Heaton. Yes, I talk about her pretty frequently. She is a favorite of mine. I would love for you to go check her out as well. She talked about Palm Sunday yesterday, and she is now posting a little bit more as she is almost coming to the end of her time period. I would love for you to consider checking her out because she talks a lot about her faith journey as well. So, a fan special favorite for you guys is Victoria Churchill with American Liberty News, and we're going to bring her right over to the show. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Happy Monday.
Yes, we made it. Another week. Here we go.
I know. And happy Holy Week as well. So I'm so thankful for this week.
Absolutely. I am as well. And happy Holy Week to yourself and your whole audience today.
Oh, thank you. So what do you have going on with 2A? We'll talk about that, and then we'll save the Trump indictment for the last.
Okay, that sounds great. So, obviously we have to recognize that we started off last week with a major tragedy in Nashville. Our hearts go out to the families that were affected by it. And, that has to be said when we talk about anything related to guns. However, we also do have to recognize that despite all the messaging that we saw from the left, the mainstream media, last week was actually a huge success for the Second Amendment community. There was great wins in several states that I just want to highlight for your audience here today. Mm-hmm. So first off, I think the biggest one was Florida finally passed their constitutional carry legislation. That is huge. They are well on their way to becoming the 26th constitutional carry state in the nation. And, that's going to be what really tips America over into having more than half of the states in the country having constitutional carry. So that is a huge win. And, it's great to see, even in light of the fact that everybody is saying, guns should be banned, that we still have legislation like this making its way through. Now, another thing that is probably equally as good, honestly, but isn't getting as much coverage, is that Colorado appears to have dropped their assault weapons ban. This is something that, has been pushed in far left states like Illinois, for example. These states have basically gone out and said that, hey, the White House won't do this, so we're going to do it. Yeah. And Colorado pulled that bill from the docket. My interpretation of this situation, I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate, but at least the way that I see it is they probably thought it was too politically charged of a week to be debating it. Mm-hmm. And, again, that's how I'm reading into it. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on behind the scenes there, but
yeah, you kind of wonder.
Kicked the can down the road in that regard. So those are two things that are kind of finalized. Obviously, with constitutional carry, DeSantis still has to sign the legislation.
Do you know when? Do you know when he's going to be signing it?
I don't know particularly. I would assume how it's going to work is just like, in Virginia right now, we've had Governor Youngkin sign hundreds of bills.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Legislature.
Yeah.
However, Florida actually did introduce this legislation before their session formally kicked off, which even caught me by surprise a little bit. Like, we knew it was going to be coming down the pipeline, but I kind of had it slated to, be writing about it like first week of May.
Yeah.
I think they did middle of February, whenever it was the last time I came on and chatted actually
Yeah,
on
I
your show about it.
Yeah.
So, obviously that was a very welcome surprise, but yeah, he kind of caught us off guard. And so, I know this is something that a lot of people in Florida and across the nation have really been looking towards, especially as DeSantis decides to fully enter 2024 or not. I think if he hadn't have been able to kind of put the force of his office behind this legislation, that would have been a question mark in the minds of a lot of primary voters. But, as long as he signs it, that's going to go away. So that's very good for him.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you something about DeSantis really quickly. I've been getting a lot of commentary about him versus Trump. And, I hear more and more about how people would like Trump to finish out his term, if you will, to finish out the next, 4 years, being 47. What are your thoughts on, let's talk about what Florida just did. Do you think that was a political move because of what happened in Nashville? Do you think that timing was, okay, this is how it's done, and as he would lead a nation through a very difficult process? Or do you think it just happened to happen that way? Coincidence, do you say? And do you think, again, do you think that is a strategy he's putting underneath his belt as he potentially announces? What are your thoughts on that?
So again, I think this checks a box in the mind of a lot of Republican primary voters that Florida is going to be a constitutional carry state. I know for years, obviously DeSantis is in his second term. So I think at least for the past, probably 2, 3, 4 years or so, a lot of Second Amendment advocates have been looking at the national concealed carry map and saying that Florida isn't colored in and being like, what the fuck are you doing on there, dude? So again, that question is finally going to be answered. Again, as I mentioned, really since December is when we've been anticipating that this legislation is going to be, introduced, and the governor is going to support it, and then he's going to sign it. So that's kind of all going according to plan. I think the timing is definitely a good messaging point, as you pointed out, but I think this would have happened either way.
Okay.
And again, this was introduced really before the session officially started, of which, obviously some states, they do that. They kind of have pre-filing of bills. So that's kind of what happened here in Florida. But this has been in the works. But, I think this is a way to lead and say, hey, I'm going to stand up for constitutional rights. That, oh, by the way, like the fact that we even have permits for concealed carry, I'm in that camp that says, well, I kind of come at it from two sides. First of all, I believe in training. As somebody that didn't grow up around firearms, I'm always the first advocate for training. However, I realize that a lot of people, especially in the gun community, did grow up with firearms. So kind of their right is something that they've had that instilled to them since they were really young children, maybe grew up hunting with their parents, things like that. So I think it should not be government mandated. And a lot of the times in going to get the permit, you have to do the class. So
right.
I'm in favor of the class. I'm in favor of the teaching and things like that. However, again, a lot of people have situations that are very different to my own, where they've been shooting guns for 10, 15 years by the time they go and, potentially are looking to carry every day.
So looking at what happened in Nashville last week, and looking at the riots that were happening around the nation shortly after that, looking at the transgender community coming out with their own statements, and, what are your thoughts with the states that do not have the laws that you can carry? What do you foresee happening with those states that maybe, like you have New York, you have Illinois, you have a lot of those blue states? Do you think they're going to kind of hype up on what happened in Nashville and really do you foresee anything happening from the Biden administration with regards to taking away our rights in those states that have those rights? What are your thoughts on that bigger picture?
So a couple of points, like I said, Colorado, thankfully, again, I think a state like Colorado would have been the perfect example of, hey, we're going to take this and politicize this and we're going to push our own agenda. But the fact that that didn't happen is a major win.
Right.
So, obviously getting good legislation is one way to kind of enhance Second Amendment rights, but stopping bad legislation is the other way to do that. So that's kind of part one. The other part is very shocking, but, I think Democrats have really completely just really gotten to that point where they're completely disregarding the laws that we see going on here in this country. And the thing that we see, somebody actually asked Karine Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, if the Biden administration was considering a weapons ban, and she could not flat out go out and say no. And
Yeah.
that is concerning.
It is.
It is very concerning because, again, this is a right that is instilled in us through our Constitution, through the Second Amendment. And she said, we have to get murder weapons off the streets.
Oh, well, you know what?
Her answer. It wasn't, we're going to say states' rights. It wasn't the president has had X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, it's up to Congress. Those would have been all perfectly fine answers that, would have probably appeased the majority of the Democrat base. But she says we have to get murder weapons off the streets. Oh, yeah. And by the way, that's actually not a point that a lot of Republicans disagree with. If you look at it, we want these things to be used in self-defense. We want to be able to use it against violent murders. Right. Oh, and by the way, if you talk about the lawlessness that is happening all across the country, but specifically in jurisdictions that are run by these, Soros funded, and specifically the Manhattan DA that we're going to be talking about later.
And let's go right into that. Because I can't stand the sight of that man. And I love the last name because, that's right in our backyard, Fort Bragg. But dear God in heaven. Okay, Soros funded him and how many others? And it is all political theater. And let's talk about what he has done and what he plans to do. And let's talk about President Trump, what he has done and what he is going to do.
So honestly, I think that the biggest threat to America today is these prosecutors that are refusing to prosecute. They are politicizing their offices. And honestly, I think these two conversations are very well paired because guess what? I live in a jurisdiction with our own Soros-funded DA. What I like to call, the Acela corridor. It's DC, it's Philadelphia, it's New York. These DAs in the Acela corridor, they are refusing to prosecute criminals, which, oh, by the way, is why we even want our Second Amendment rights to begin with.
Exactly.
Because, we ran two stories this weekend on our site from another one of my fellow coworkers, just of people speaking out about how the Manhattan DA is not doing his job. His job is to get rapists and murderers. And, these aren't people that have one or two charges. These are people that have been catching charges for 5, 10, 15 years.
Yep.
And these systems are consistently letting them out. And, it has to stop. And in this investigation, the Manhattan DA, in a very highly politicized time, he stoked the flames of division even further in this country. Yeah. And he decided to, go after a 70-something-year-old man that lives in Florida instead of taking criminals off the streets of the jurisdiction that he is responsible for.
Right.
Again, I feel like I am, fully kind of within my right to speak about this because I live in a jurisdiction in Arlington County that has our own Soros-funded DA, Parisa Degani-Tofty. She is absolutely horrible. Unfortunately, there's not any Republicans running against her, right? Like Arlington is probably a place where Republicans can't even win.
Yeah.
At least right now, we're working on it, right? Like I'm trying to be part of the solution in that way, being involved with my YR club and the county party. But, if the election was held today, a Republican would not win. So there is actually one candidate that is not Soros funded. He is still a Democrat, but if he could at least get into office, that would probably put us in a slightly better position than we are today. Mm-hmm. But look, like in DC, we have children, literally children, these same people that, are in schools and supposed to be in schools and learning. We have children at 14, 15, 16 years old committing carjackings and murders in DC, and they're not even being tried as adults.
Right.
They're going to go out and they're going to keep committing crimes. And these prosecutors do absolutely nothing about it. I mean, just, I guess this was 2 weeks ago at this point, but it was all in the news cycle last week. There was a staffer for Senator Rand Paul that was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Got stabbed right on the Capitol street. Yeah.
Yeah. Crime around Capitol Hill is getting horrible. I've talked, before about people just having their car tires taken off, but this is all petty crimes. But a lot of the times, right, the way that these criminals go about doing their business is they start with something small and then they end up with these massive crimes, and because they're not being prosecuted for steps 1, 2, and 3, they get to 4 and 5, and 4 and 5 is when it has a completely horrible impact on society.
Right.
And
Right.
again, it's everywhere. Like, I was at a conference last week. I was talking to one of my friends who came down to the event from Philadelphia. Her
Yeah.
husband was attacked. She and her husband were walking home from the grocery store, and her husband was attacked when he was carrying a bunch of groceries.
Broad daylight.
I mean, but based on what she told me, yes.
And this is in Philadelphia.
This is in Philadelphia.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm not laughing. It's pathetic. It's disgusting. It is the city of brotherly love, and you can't even walk out your home and get attacked.
Yeah.
That's awful. But look who's running our cities. Look who's running New York. Look who's running Philadelphia. Look who's running Chicago. You got mobsters. You got mobsters who don't care. They will put illegal people right in those cities and put them in highfalutin hotels where Americans are suffering. They will put all of these people back on the streets, give them guns, and yet take our guns away. Okay, that's bullcrap, and you know it. Sorry, it's Monday. Sorry.
No, we're fired up. No, but
I'm fired up because it's ridiculous. I just had a guy from Brooklyn on talking about this, about his book and what is happening in the culture wars of what's happening in New York City. It is destroying itself from within.
Absolutely. And here's something else. There was a story that was posted on the Daily Caller last week that I was shocked when I read the headline, but it's that prosecutors in DC are not prosecuting over 2/3 of the crimes that are happening. They're just dropping them.
Because they don't feel like it? Because there's not enough money? Because of DEI? What is it? What's the reasoning? What's the lame excuse?
I mean, probably all of the above. But again, I think if they are prosecuting, they're probably prosecuting these higher crimes, but they don't realize that it's a slippery slope, is that it starts with people robbing the Walmart on H Street, which, by the way, is closing. The real reason is because it keeps getting robbed. I don't know the excuse that Walmart told the mainstream media as to why they're closing one of the Walmarts in DC, right? But that's the real reason, is that they probably aren't turning a profit because people keep stealing things. And again, that is step one. That is step one. And then people go to stealing car tires, and they go to carjackings. And then, there was a case, I believe it was here in DC, of somebody was committed a crime, got in an Uber, called the Uber after I think it was a carjacking, so he stole a car, then he got in an Uber. Somehow the police figured out that he was in the Uber where he was, and then the guy ended up shooting himself in the back of the Uber as he was fleeing police.
I'm sorry, I'm just like, why do I even want to wrap my brain around that? That's pathetic. What is that? What is that? It's like, are we living in, what's the word? I don't know. Is it
apocalyptic times?
That's what I was about to say. I was thinking about zombies. Are we going to start eating each other now and say, it's okay, Okay, I have to say something, and this is off to a kind of, but not really. Okay. Smithsonian, our beloved DC, where the Smithsonian, the American History Museum, all of what true history was about. Well, you think. So yesterday afternoon, I was scrolling through Instagram, kind of getting my ideas for the week, and up popped this flag that was designed for the Smithsonian. And it's kind of like a purplish blue and then a pink, and has layers. You know what that was? It was a transgender flag. I want to talk about really briefly before we hop off of here, and then I need to focus on Holy Week and doing some yoga so I don't go off on anybody. You heard a lot of transgender conversations happen last week. And you also have noticed that there is an ongoing theme of transgenders and high crimes, people being murdered, people being hurt, etc. Can you speak to any of what we're seeing happening within this transgenders being the soul of our nation, as O'Biden said last week? And really, the very soul of our nation is God, not transgenders, not you, not me, but God. But I want to talk about the gun aspect and what, if you want to psychobabble with me for just a hot second, what were your first instincts when you saw that soul go into that school and kill all those other souls?
I mean, again, first reaction is shock, right? Is always shock.
Yeah.
Feelings of mourning, obviously. I watched the video, the body camera footage.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say props to the Nashville Police Department for releasing that footage. I watched it. It was hard to watch.
It was hard.
But there are a couple of bright spots. First of all, we saw, the brave police officers running towards danger. That is what we want our law enforcement officers to do. Oh, and by the way, with all of these stupid leftist ideology that is being pumped into our schools, our universities, our police departments, I think we are losing police officers like that will go ahead and do that. So we want to commend the great police work that happened there. It was about 3 minutes from when they arrived on scene to when the shooter was dead. So that is absolutely prime police work.
And also, you got a United States Marine right there.
Absolutely. Marine. And then I think it was his partner who was actually also working the day of the Nashville bombings a couple Christmases ago as well. So, those men are trained to, again, run towards danger,
Yes.
which is something that
the left does not do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
They hide, they coddle. But so, these men are the absolute pinnacle of U.S. law enforcement, and they should be celebrated as heroes. And, they are being that. One was, I think, actually last year awarded for great police work in his department. So we need to elevate officers like that go ahead, run towards danger, do their jobs and beyond, and really protect our communities. The other positive, I guess, if you can see a positive that came out of that situation, is that there was actually reports that the shooter tried to attack another school and decided that it was too well guarded to attack. So
I heard
I am personally in favor of having armed security guards at schools because, again, this is a talking point that we use frequently on the right, but I'm going to parrot it because I think it's a good one. And it's that, we guard our politicians with guns. We guard our celebrities with guns. We guard concerts with guns. We guard, mass sporting events with guns. But guess what? We guard our children with a sign that says this is a gun-free zone. And that has to stop.
It does. It does.
That absolutely has to stop.
Matt Strickland, who's running for Virginia Senate, had talked about with his combat veteran status and also talking about the school shootings and what's been happening. And I had always loved whosever idea it was, I don't know, but I credit to whoever originally came up with it. It may have been quite a few people, but he wants to implement it. And that is having more veterans in our schools who know how to shoot a gun, who know how to protect, who know what to look for. There's something to that. More having veteran service resource officers than just having those, resource officers that are just, resource officers. There's something to that.
Absolutely.
So I want to applaud him for that, but I also want to applaud whoever came up with that idea. It's similar to seeing that, URA Marine Corps, that guy going in. So,
because again, these people are trained to protect, and that is exactly what we saw that officer do.
Yeah.
It looked like, honestly, frankly, it looked like any kind of Hollywood production that you would see where they're going out, they're clearing rooms, right? There's a show that I love watching. It's called SEAL Team. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
It honestly looked like an episode of SEAL Team, which is a little bit scary that we had to see that. Well, it's not a little bit. It's very scary that we had to see that in America. And that's actually, I know that's a show that's actually been commended for by people that are obviously more knowledgeable, a lot more knowledgeable in military protocol and procedure than I am. That's actually a show that has been commended for very accurate representations of what an undercover mission looks like. And I think we saw, I think the whole world really saw that when that police footage was released.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, personally, I don't really have a problem with people being transgender if they're adults. When it comes to children, stop it.
Yeah.
If you're an adult and you want to mutilate your body, whatever, it doesn't affect me. Now, again, when it comes to children, absolutely not. However, my concern is when this very minute segment of the population become so sensationalized in the mainstream media, in makeup brands. I mean, what is this? Like Dylan Mulvaney with a Bud Light ad. Who is that marketed to?
I don't know.
Who wants to go and buy Bud Light? Like the same people that are listening to Morgan Wallen on a Sunday night are not going to go out and buy Bud Light because Dylan Mulvaney told them to.
Yeah. What I see, and obviously we didn't plan to talk about this, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there. I saw a very confused girl who did not who she was or whose she was. And when someone is so completely confused, there's so much evil around that's inflicting them, from the drag queen shows at the schools to porn in the books at schools, you name it. It's a gun-free zone. Well, no, it needs to be a porn-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be a drag-free zone. But what hurts me the most is these precious souls. She looked so scared, but yet there was something within her that was not holy. And that's what concerns me about the distortion and what they are doing to themselves. We'll talk more about that, but I just wanted to put that out there. I saw a soul who was struggling, who may have been raised in a Christian home, but evil got to her. And we need to pray for her.
This is something that people always talk about, right? Is that you go to college and you get radicalized. I always say that actually happened to me. I used to be pretty middle of the road libertarian when I was in high school. I think it's because I grew up in a lot of, some very primarily leftist, left-leaning communities. Mm-hmm. Always knew I was conservative, but I kind of thought libertarianism was the best way to get there. I will full on say I was radicalized by college. I'm a lot more conservative than I was when I went into college, but that's because I came in with a strong set of beliefs, and throughout having them challenged throughout my education with my classmates, with my peers, with people that I was involved in different political organizations, I became a lot more hard-headed in my conservative beliefs. So I full on believe that college radicalizes, because I think I'm an example of that. But a lot of the times, the radicalization that happens is the opposite way. I mean, we see that so much. We see that so much because this DEI, this social emotional learning, it is pushed down your throats, and it is starting earlier and earlier and earlier. And so the way that parents send off their children into the real world, or college, I guess, is for a lot of people that first step before they get to the real world. They come out of there with completely different beliefs. And that's why, I don't have children yet, but when I do have my own children, I want to raise them to think for themselves, to challenge authority. That is something that I'm very confident and comfortable in doing, even though it doesn't always earn me the best of friends. But, I will go out and I will do that. And I hope to keep doing that until the day that I die, because I will always challenge authority. I will.
Yeah.
And we need to teach our children to do that. And yes, there was a time when in kindergarten when we were doing some activity and I didn't like it, and I got sent out into the hallway, and I had to tell every single school administrator that, was walking past me as I was sitting there, why I was sent out to the hallway. Honestly, today, I don't remember what it was, but I remember that I was really happy about it, because I agree with defying authority when you don't agree with it. Yeah. And guess what? America is one of the few places in this world where you can actually still do that today. And we need to celebrate that, and celebrate that we can do that and not end up, in jail. Or, unfortunately, as we saw with the guy that posted the memes about the election, apparently for some reason, if you defy authority and you defy common thinking, even if it's a joke, sometimes you do end up in jail. But guess what? Like in France, there's a case going through right now. I think they might have just decided on it, that some woman posted anti-Macron sentiments on Facebook, and she is going to jail. Similar things are happening in England. Again, countries that we, often see ourselves as equal with.
Yeah.
Other countries that we consider to be a part of the more free and I guess free thinking world, right? Like, we don't look at these countries and say that they're authoritarian nations. But if you look at the behaviors and some of the things that are being handed down in countries that don't have the Second Amendment, and this is something that I always come back to, because, again, that is some very core components of my deeply radicalized beliefs that I hold today, is the belief in the First and the Second Amendment.
Yep.
And we see what happens when we lose those rights.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can't. And I know we're getting to the end of time here, but I do just want to give a quick shout out to some of my friends doing great work in the states of Kansas and Nebraska, also on Second Amendment issues.
Of course, you had to say Kansas.
Of course, Kansas.
Seriously?
Of course, I had to. But, I've got some great friends in both those states doing great work for our Second Amendment, again, being largely ignored by the mainstream media, getting some coverage in some of our local and regional outlets. But just want to say my good friend, Rebecca Schmo, she is a longtime Second Amendment activist, very well known in the Second Amendment community. I should actually honestly see if she wants to come and chat on your show, because I think you would
bring her over. Bring her over.
Get along with you, and I get along with her. And so I feel like you two would click pretty.
Bring her over. I'd love to have her. So on that note, we got to wrap.
Yes, she is great.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you just don't mind. I know we got to hop off, but she's got two bills that she's carrying. One is the Eddie Eagle gun safety bill. And then the other one is Kansas's elimination of constitutional carry or concealed carry permit fees.
Okay.
This is legislation that was passed in the state of South Dakota, actually, last year, signed into law by Governor Noem. Kansas is working on a complement to that bill. That bill is out of the House where she brought it up. It's in the Senate, and it's getting some final votes hopefully this week. And also Nebraska is hopefully going to follow Florida to be the 27th constitutional carry state. They're doing great work there. That legislation has been brought up for also the past 2 or 3 years, and it's failed. And now it is moving on to its final vote as of last Tuesday. It has one more final reading before it can go and be signed by Governor Herbert. So always good to look at the heartland, the great work that's being done by the legislators there to really secure our rights and reinforce the things that make America America in the face of this crazy ideologies that are being pushed by the left in DC and in other states. There's always people that are working for sanity and for common sense. And I just wanted to make sure that we give them a shout out, because a lot of people aren't talking about it.
Yeah. Hashtag common sense, hashtag middle America, hashtag heartland America, hashtag the flyover states. And I got in trouble from one of my Kansas friends saying that one time. I'll never forget it. So I don't say it very often. But anyway, beautiful parts of the nation. Thank you for highlighting Nebraska and Kansas there. On that note, stay tuned. Wednesday, we will have Monsignor Jamie from Brooklyn, another Brooklyn friend, coming back to celebrate Holy Week. Don't miss it. 9:05 a.m. Eastern Time here Wednesday at Common Sense America. Until then, I will see you guys then. Have a great Monday and a wonderful, wonderful Holy Week. And my apologies for saying crap. All right, you guys have a great day.
Time for Common Sense America.